Today on the show, I'm talking with Lauren Lazarus. Lauren lives in Saranac Lake, New York. While working with the debt relief counselors at Money Management International, Lauren paid off $25,000 of debt in about 4.5 years. She also increased her credit score by 113 points along the way. Here today to share more about her debt payoff story is Lauren Lazarus. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I love your story. We're going to get more into it, but let's just start with you. Could you share a little bit about who you are, where you live, and what you do?
Sure. So for the past 10 years, I've worked in early childhood education, both an educator and an administrator. I recently, over the past few months, decided to take a step back and pursue some passion projects that I've had that I've kind of put on the back burner. I couldn't really prioritize while I was paying off, so much debt. That's not the time that you say, let's go, take on my dreams.
Yeah.
So I'm fortunate to be able to be working on those things right now and taking care of my little kiddos.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I can tell, you have that very calming, you can deal with chaotic children presence about you. So I can totally see that. I can see that. So tell me, let's talk about your debt a little bit. Tell me more about what was going on in your life when you accumulated this debt. Was there a certain moment that you realized you needed outside help?
Definitely. So I started accumulating this debt. I was in a pretty unhealthy relationship with my daughter's father, and I was really depressed. And one way that I coped with that sadness and kind of feeling like stuck was to shop. And, unfortunately, there's people find ways to deal with the things that they're dealing with that tend not to be the best for them in the long run. And unfortunately, this was that. Before I knew it, I had accumulated about $10,000 in debt, buying things that I thought were going to make my life better or, chasing that fleeting happiness. I finally decided to leave the relationship and I got my own apartment, and suddenly, there is a very real and concrete visual of the emptiness. And I started to fill it. And, I needed furniture, and this is my place. I needed to look like my aesthetic. So, buying things to hang on the walls, buying, matching room sets for my daughter's room, all thinking that, this is well-intentioned and I deserve these things, but not paying attention to how quickly I was maxing these cards out. I decided to take another job, and that had me kind of reevaluate my finances. And when I actually wrote things down, I was like, wow, I am just making minimum payments. That's all I'm ever going to be able to do. Like, I'm literally living paycheck to paycheck and just getting by. There's nothing extra. There's nothing left over. And I do remember the moment that I kind of resigned myself to the fact that this was my life. And I was like, well, I don't really need a house. That's people raise their kids in apartments all the time. I don't need to buy a house. I don't need, a fancy new car. It's, I'll be okay. But then I was offered an upper level position with the school I was working for, and I needed additional certifications. Those certifications were things that I just had to have. The school wasn't going to afford them for me, so I had to pay for them myself. So I went home that day and I applied for a loan to get these certifications, and I was immediately denied. And that was my rock bottom. That's when I realized, this is going to really negatively impact my life. And I needed to figure out a way to get out of it. And my mom came over, and I never wanted to tell her that I was in $20-some thousand worth of debt. I wanted her to have this picture of me as like this, educated, hardworking, teacher and administrator. I in no way, shape, or form wanted her to think anything less of me because, we talk about that debt stigma. And I just kind of blurted it out. And I said, I can't save any money. I can't, pay for these certifications. I'm in $20-some thousand worth of debt. And she kind of looked at me like, where did I go wrong? And she didn't really say too much, but then she called me the next day and she gave me MMI's contact information. And she said, I really think you should reach out to them.
Hmm.
And I did. And I'm so grateful I did. It ended up being the best decision that I've ever made for myself financially.
Wow. I mean, your story is so relatable that, like, and I kind of appreciate that because, you move into an apartment and the natural thing is like, we got to buy furniture. You got
Yeah.
to spend this, you got to do this, I deserve this.
Right.
And it's so easy for us to make those leaps and those jumps into debt and then look up and go, oh man, what have I done?
Mhm.
And I think, to your point, like there's a stigma there, but it's a struggle I think that so many of us have. And there shouldn't be a stigma, and we can talk about it and we can get help. And that's just so important. And I'm so glad that you did. And let's keep talking about your story here. So,
Sure.
so let's talk about your work with MMI. Since working with MMI, just to reiterate, you paid off $25,000 in debt. You've increased your credit score by 113 points, which is fantastic. How did getting a personalized debt management plan help you to balance your budget and see a path forward?
So the biggest thing it gave me was clarity. I knew the direction that I needed to be going in. Like, I knew that I needed to pay down this debt to move forward with life. But really the information you can get from Google is only going to take you so far, like the snowball method, or the pay off the ones with the smallest balance and then attack the larger ones. Like, I really felt like I was kind of like, bushwhacking the trail on my own and in the right direction, but just painstakingly slow. And MMI came in and, they gave me, by negotiating with the creditors to lower those interest rates and to talk about my budget. And like, they really helped me to realize like, you are doing this on your own, but it can be a little bit easier for you.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so they held that little guiding light and I kept walking that path. But, and I still put in a lot of my own hard work, but they were always there to kind of redirect me and keep me focused on that mission.
Wow, that's fantastic. So let's talk a little bit more about that experience. So I wonder if you could talk about what your credit counseling experience was like with MMI and what you would say your biggest learning lesson was through the whole process.
I loved how they made me feel like I was in control of what was a very out of control situation. They put me right in the driver's seat, and I was able to take responsibility for my actions and for the debt that I had created. But they did so like in a non-judgmental way. The past is in the past, and let's just keep moving forward. And they're really great motivators too. That was my favorite thing. Every time I would call with a question or, needing help with something, they would say, they'd end the call with, congratulations on paying off 30% of your debt. And, great job. You paid off 40%. That's amazing. And so I'd always leave the call feeling like, yeah, that is amazing. That is pretty awesome.
It is. I mean, it's quite an accomplishment. It's really profound. And what did you have any particular big lessons or takeaways from that experience?
Definitely. I learned to embrace minimalism because I really had to prioritize the payment to MMI. Like it had to be rent, utilities, food on the table, and this MMI payment. I opted for a 2010 vehicle that was safe and reliable, but no bells and whistles. Keep that payment small so that I could prioritize this and to really focus on like, okay, do I really need this thing? Or is it just kind of, you want it? I realize now like the value of things is more to do with the time that I have to spend at work away from my family versus, what its monetary value is.
So I wonder, I'm just curious, like you said, embrace minimalism. And you did mention this whole like want versus need thing. I'm curious if you have any other advice about sort of embracing that idea of minimalism and balancing that in your life.
Yeah. I would, I would just say like, things aren't ever going to make you happy because there's always going to be something newer and better. We're, kind of programmed as humans to become dissatisfied, relatively quickly. I mean, I know I was like, when I was hitting that, one click, buy it now with one click, that, rush of dopamine I would get was so fleeting. It was, I'd have it for maybe 2 or 3 days. And then as soon as the thing came in the mail, I was like, oh, back down here again. So valuing the relationships that I have with people, the time that I get to spend with people over spending money.
Absolutely. That's a great way to look at it. All right. So now you've gone through the debt management process with MMI. We've talked about the numbers. You've had some pretty big wins happen in your life lately. I wonder if you could share a little bit about that.
Definitely. I very much remember the day that I felt I had to give up that dream of owning a home. And not last August, the August before that, I actually went in and applied for a mortgage and was approved.
That's fantastic.
Yes. And on December of 2022, I closed on my home.
Wow. Congratulations. Yeah. That's fantastic. You. Okay. Anything else?
Yes. I had always wanted to start a college fund for my daughter. It was something that I never had. And I always wanted to give that to her so that she didn't have to start off with loans and things like that. And now I take the payment that I was paying towards my debt, that almost $500 a month, and I'm just putting it straight in the bank. And, I'm used to living without it. So
yeah, that's a great way to do it. And, I love that idea of like pay off the debt and then roll that money into something that can provide so much value down the road, right? Mm-hmm. That's amazing. And your daughter will so appreciate that. That's such a great gift to be able to give to her. So all right. So let's talk a little bit. You mentioned the stigma of consumer debt. Let's talk about that a little bit more. How do you think a debt counseling service like MMI sort of helps to overcome and break that debt stigma?
I think one of the major ways is that they negotiate to lower your interest rates. They help you with that. And then they help you with your budget and getting your finances together. They don't minimize the amount that you owe. So, what I spent on those cards, I had to pay back. I got to pay it back at a more reasonable interest rate, but it was still, I'm still repaying for those mistakes,
Yeah.
And they meet you with, such a non-judgmental attitude. I went, made that first phone call, against every instinct of self-reliance that I had. I'm from a family where my father would rather die before he'd ask anybody for help. My sister, she'll claw and scratch her way out of any mess before she'll ask for help. So for me to make that phone call was like, I was, kind of like the dog with the tail between its legs. And, but they don't judge you and they just want to help you move forward. And I think I think we need that. And like you said, debt is way more common than people want to believe.
That's great. All right. So last question. I love to ask this question to guests on the show. What does freedom from debt look like for you?
Oh my gosh. So freedom from debt to me is opportunity. I get to start over again with a fresh, clean slate, but I get to go at it this time with more knowledge and more confidence than I've ever had. I'm more financially savvy than I have ever been. And it's really exciting to be exploring that part of life with confidence, looking at things like, how can I create a source of passive income? What about investing? Like I would have never, like me, like I would have never thought that that's something I would be doing. And I get a chance to do that now.
That's fantastic. Well, congratulations on the debt that you've paid off, on the increased credit score, and on the big wins of the mortgage and saving for college and all the amazing things you're going to do in the future. Congratulations, Lauren. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you.
This guest is a real MMI client whose success is the result of hard work and dedication. While MMI cannot guarantee results, taking early action can increase available options and improve long-term outcomes. Thanks for listening to this episode of Long Story Short, brought to you by Money Management International. To learn more about how MMI helps people from all walks of life get unstuck and out of the vicious cycle of debt through personalized solutions that inspire hope, visit moneymanagement.org. This episode was produced by Edgewise.media. Script writing and production by Clara Jennings, editing by Brandon Ellis, and show hosting by me, Adam Walker.